All right, so good morning, everyone. I'm Mehek. I'm your room host for today. Before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation on whose land ICC stands and on which we meet today. And I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. Just some quick housekeeping notes. Please ensure that all your devices are silenced, just to make sure that all the audience is able to hear the content that our speakers are delivering today. And all the sessions today are being live streamed and recorded, and they will be available for you after the event. Now, I know you're not here to listen to me, so I'll introduce our first session for today, which is Elevating Gen AI and LLM Observability with Amazon Bedrock and Dynatrace. And I'd like to welcome on stage Pankaj Bishnoi and Adam Gardner.
Thanks, Mehak.
Hey everyone, welcome to the session. So I'm Adam Gardner from Dynatrace. I've worked at Dynatrace for quite a while now, and with me is Pankaj.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the session. I'm Pankaj. I'm a solutions architect with AWS in 6th year now. I work with AWS customers like yourselves in ANZ, and I am an observability enthusiast as well. So welcome to the session.
Okay, so let's get into it. So a quick agenda. Obviously, we'll talk about the Gen AI opportunity that is in front of all of us. We're all faced with this new world and new possibilities and new risks. Pankaj will then take over and talk to you about Gen AI on AWS and the various capabilities that AWS offer, and then I'll pick up the stage again and actually show you this in practice. We have a demo application to show you observability and what that looks like in Dynatrace. But before I get started, a quick show of hands for the audience in the room. How many of you are aware of or working with AWS and Dynatrace? Okay. Of those, how many of you are working with Gen AI in production? Aha, okay, risks. Good. Okay, so for those not familiar with Dynatrace, what is the Dynatrace platform? Well, you have observability data and you need to send it somewhere to make sense of it, to action it, to understand your business, both at a deep technical level, but also at that sort of business level. And that's what Dynatrace is. It's a unified platform for all of your observability data, metrics, events, logs, traces, and so on. And we pull that back together, and as you probably know, observability is both a cross-team and a cross-organizational capability. So it doesn't really matter what your role is, you have questions that can be answered with the observability data. And we're really trying to empower those different personas, those teams, to automate and make sense and make use of all of that data. Now, in terms of Dynatrace and AWS, I've been with Dynatrace for 12 years now, and for 10 of those years, we've had very deep integrations and partnerships with AWS. I'm not going to read them all out. You can see on the bottom of the screen there, we've got lots of competencies, and it's really about modernizing beyond just a migration, beyond that lift and shift. How do you, as you're moving to AWS, as you're leveraging the existing and new capabilities of AWS, how do you get the most out of that with an observability lens? And of course, we've got over 100 native AWS integrations, so all of the CloudWatch logs, the metrics, all of that stuff, you can stream straight into Dynatrace, and so it sits alongside the rest of your enterprise. The one that I did want to highlight was the fact that we won in Europe the EMEA Partner of the Year Award for 2024. So that's a little bit about Dynatrace. And with that, as I say, I'm going to hand over to Pankaj, and then I'll be back soon.
Thanks. So folks, before we get any further, I would like to just build up on what Adam asked. Ask another question. How many of you are currently experimenting with Gen AI? Just show of hands, please. Okay. So we can see quite a number of folks in the room experimenting with Gen AI, but then the translation to production, we see very few of you are currently running it in production. Okay, so let's start with the Gen AI trends as of now. So as per the report published by McKinsey Group, one of the key things what we are seeing in the market opportunity as of now is half of the AI capabilities that enterprises are adopting need customization. So what I mean by customization is it's domain adaptation of that foundation model to your own enterprise data, and that's a key one for you to build successful Gen AI application for your own customers. So that's one. And the second key thing that comes out of this is that not all experiments actually translate to production. So there's a big gap between how much you're experimenting and how many of those are actually going into production. So that's a key gap. And vast majority of the attendees who were surveyed have come back and they risk that the organizations actually are worried about inaccuracy of these large language models. So inaccuracy actually translate to PR nightmare, or if you're trying to think of a publicly facing Gen AI application, inaccuracy becomes a key risk because you want to do responsible AI, you want to do AI in a safe and in a mechanism where it's private and secure, but you don't want to have a scenario where the LLM model comes back with the response that hits the, that becomes a PR nightmare for your organization. Now let's dive deep into these specific challenges. So as per the survey done by our partner Deloitte, 41% of the organizations are currently struggle to define ROI. So that is a key one, because when we, and I as a solutions architect, I have worked with many customers here in ANZ. So when we started working with generative AI projects, there are lots of cool ideas, but then if you don't define the return of investment on that, like what are you getting out of it? Is it a productivity improvement? Is it a new revenue stream generation? What is that actual project achieving? And if you don't do that ROI well, the chances of that project translated to production are very low. So that's one. And then other key aspect of it is most of the organizations are worried about privacy and security. So when we talk of Gen AI applications, organizations are worried about data leak to these foundation models, and then the implication it's going to have on their organization, especially in sectors like FSI, healthcare. But that's just one of the example, right? But then it's applicable to all the organizations across the board. You don't want LLM or the underlying foundation model to have your data exposed. So that's another key thing. But when we start this discussion, how do we get started with these discussions? So that's just my experience and then AWS field experience as well. When we talk to customers like yourselves, most of you come back and start the discussion with LLM model capabilities, right? So whether it's Haiku 3.5 versus Sonnet 4, we start going into the LLM or foundation model capabilities, but then that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So that LLM or the foundation model might have great capabilities, but how do you define or how do you adopt it in your own enterprise? That's where the key is to have solid data foundations, right? So when you're thinking of the Gen AI application end to end, think of data foundations. Think of the storage tier that you're going to use. Think of the compliance and governance requirements that are applicable for your own industries. Think of what sort of integration you're going to have, how you are exposing your own private analytics, data lakes, data stores to these foundation models or generative AI applications, and how are you doing it in a secure mechanism? So that's the whole flywheel. Like you can't just have generative AI application just with a foundation model alone. There are heaps of things that have to be done right for you to have a successful generative AI application. Why that's key is, and that's probably one of the reasons why these experiments are not translating to production stage as of now, because once you start going into experiment and when you translate to the next stage, then you start realizing all these data challenges, pipelines that have to build. And if it's a publicly facing application, then you start thinking about the privacy and security controls that have to be built on top of it. But the key takeaway of this is, even when you're starting in your initial stage of the project, think about end-to-end ecosystem, think about data foundation, think about your vector stores, how you want to actually store your embeddings if you are using that, what sort of vector store is relevant, Are you doing any data duplication? Because that also might add to the cost as well. Now let's change tracks and go into AWS Generative AI Stack. So when we look at AWS Generative AI Stack, we look at 3 layers. So the first layer at the bottom is infrastructure tier. When I talk of infrastructure, it is the tier where we are having custom-made silicon for training and inference. We got GPU instances for you to consume. We got SageMaker AI if you want to come in and deploy your own models. At the middle tier, we have got capabilities like Amazon Bedrock that seamlessly allows you to build generative AI applications for your own organizations in a private and secure mechanism. At the top, we have got custom-made generative AI applications from Amazon Q Suite, like Amazon Q Business and Amazon Q Developer. For the purpose of this session, what we're going to do is now we will dive deep into Amazon Bedrock. Now, what is Amazon Bedrock if you are new to Amazon Bedrock? Amazon Bedrock is a fully managed service that offers industry-leading foundation models from leading AI companies and Amazon. It does it in a way that it just does it via single API. So you have the peace of mind. You can plug and play models. Remember, models are getting launched every few weeks, right? Every few weeks you are getting a better model, which is faster and probably more efficient than the previous one. So you don't want to logged in to be one particular model. So that's where the adaptability and the plug and play is very critical for your application. So best practice here would be, when you're thinking of your generative AI application, start with experimentation, start with model evaluation, because model evaluation again plays a key part. If you are having a use case A, you need to look at what all models can perform that use case and then do proper evaluation to come back with the right model selection. And observability plays a key part in that, because how would you justify it back to business? You need to have observability enabled so you can create these dashboards. Adam is going to talk about it towards the second half of the session, but then always keep in mind when you are talking of GenAI application, don't be bogged down or don't go with a predefined mindset to select a model, specific model, because that's one of the common pitfalls we have seen customers do in the recent past. That being said, in addition to that, model adaptation to your own domains is a key ask. So Bedrock supports model customization via techniques like distillation or continuous pre-training or fine-tuning. So make use of that. Depending on the use case we are talking about, you can use one of those techniques. In addition to that, to support retrieval augmentation generation workflows, we have got managed knowledge base or manage RAG capability within Bedrock. But now what we are seeing in last 3 to 6 months is industry is heading towards more of agentic architecture or autonomous agentic architectures that are emerging. So to cater for that, we have got Bedrock agents that you can leverage to build those workflows within your organizations, and then you can leverage a Bedrock agent capability. In the end, you can do this generative AI application, or you can create these generative AI applications within your AWS account boundaries or your AWS ecosystem boundaries, using the privacy security controls that your security teams or your developers are familiar with, likes of IAM, KMS, etc. So nothing is changing in that front. So you can still use the familiar AWS security controls with AWS generative AI application building as well. And lastly, Bedrock is serverless, so you don't have to manage any infrastructure. So then it's from operational overhead perspective, it doesn't introduce any operational overhead on your cloud ops teams to manage any infrastructure if you're using Bedrock in that aspect. Now let's look at, we looked at Bedrock, how it comes in and addresses that plug and play requirement or model customization requirement for your use cases. Now then security aspect or privacy and security controls is another key ask from our customers. Amazon Guardrails definitely comes in handy in that. What Guardrails does is, via a single API, it introduces a concept of defining controls against your user input and model output. So you can define controls that are content safety controls. So you can have a peace of mind about the content that is being produced by the LLM or the content that is being sent into the generative AI applications, that it is done as per your organization policies. So you can define content safety controls like model jailbreak or prompt injection checks, or you can do things like denied topics that you don't want to serve via Gen AI application, or you can add checks like profanity check. So that's one of the dimensions Bedrock Guardrails addresses. Second key ask from the customers has been, okay, that's fine, but how do I safeguard myself against PII leaks or any sensitive data leaks? So Bedrock Guardrails comes in and it has the capability to detect and mask your PII or sensitive information. So remember, we don't even want PII to be leaked to the LLM, right? Or PII to be leaked to your malicious actor who is trying to compromise your Gen AI application if it's a public-facing app. So that's another key security control that you can apply. And lastly, one of the key risks that, or one of the key challenges in Gen AI adoption barrier we saw was consistency or inaccuracy of the model responses. So Bedrock Guardrails, we can do reasoning checks. You can do the model evaluation checks as well, like is the response that is coming back, is it relevant or not against your application? So that safeguards you from response consistency as well. So you can detect model hallucination and you can be safeguarded. Now, how do you get started with Bedrock Guardrails? To get started with Amazon Bedrock in general or Guardrails, it's very easy. It's like these lines of code that you're seeing on screen. You have to start with your own prompt that is going to be configured for your application. In addition to that, you'll have a LLM that you are invoking. You'll have invocation parameters or things like temperature control for that underlying LLM, how you want that LLM to respond. But the key thing here is how are you enforcing security control? So that's where Guardrails comes in handy. We create a guardrail, let's say for our organization, we created a guardrail. We set that guardrail up here. And I can use that guardrail in n number of applications depending on my organization needs. I'll define that guardrail here. And I'll say, for this particular Gen AI application, use this guardrail to apply security controls. But the important thing here is there is a parameter called trace enabled. Make sure you do that, because that is going to translate that whole guardrail that you saw on the console from a black box to something that is observable, because you want to observe how your guardrails are performing. It's not just you define guardrails and then you are just simply saying, it's all done, right? My guardrail is working. But how do you take it back and then start observing, are your safety checks working? Are there any prompt injection attempts happening on your application? Is there any PII leak happening? So make sure you enable observability for guardrails. That's going to actually translate that whole black box into a truly observable system. And then remember, the guardrails are configurable levers. You can actually change the levers as per your organization needs or as per the data that you're observing. So with that, what I would like to do is I'll hand it over back to Adam, who is going to take us through how actually you can do it at scale in production applications. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Pankaj. You know what I hear in your talk is risk. I hear compliance. I hear complexity. And so let's have a look at how we can actually tackle that complexity. But before I do, I would encourage the people who had their hand up that are building this as POCs in pre-production. Please do. I've had 3 conversations already this morning with apps that are out there that don't have observability in. And it's not just a technical piece, it's business. You can use that observability data as business justification to carry that POC into production. So it's actually going to help you make the case for your POC. But let's have a look at how we could approach this observability. So kind of in a layered approach, you might say, well, we start at the top, which is, we've all seen them, the thumbs up or the thumbs down, and the little text box that you get that says, how do you feel about this? And actually don't discount that. That's very good information. It's solid information, because that is a very clear signal from a user about how they felt about your application. Moving down the stack, we get into things that if you're an APM or an observability individual, you'll know anyway, things like CPU and memory. But we do look at prompt tokens, token counts, token usage. all the way through guardrails, as Pankaj was saying, all the way down, so if you're training your own models, CPU, GPU usage. And pulling all of that together gives you the holistic picture of your application. It's not one or another layer, you need a cross-section of all of this to really have a grasp on what's going on. The other way to look at it is a use case basis. Cost and performance, of course, is important in every application. Now, the way we track cost in Gen AI applications may differ, but at the end of the day, if it costs too much, it's probably not going to get pushed to production. Data compliance is going to get even more critical, and as Pankaj was alluding to, monitoring those guardrails, because it's one thing having them there, but if you're not understanding how the guardrails are impacting your application, are they too strict? Are they not strict enough? And so you can play that dance with getting just that right level of granularity. So I want to show you that with a demo. So this is a personalized virtual travel, and the user enters their place they want to go, let's say Sydney or Las Vegas, and the LLM brings back some personalized, we use RAG to personalize their response. From an architecture perspective, the user enters their prompt into a user input box, of course, on the front end, and we instrument, we go through and we first ask, is that city in the cache? If it is, we return from the cache, of course, to save a little bit of cost, and if it's not, we send the response through Bedrock to the model, and the user gets their response back. Perfect. What we then do is we use a framework called Trace Loop by Open LLMetry, which instruments the entire thing with open telemetry, and we send all of that observability data back into Dynatrace. So let's just give you a conceptual, a view of what's going on here. This is the application. You can see the user is entering their search term, and you notice the little drop-down boxes. So if you want to, you can choose your model, you can choose the database, you can really, as Pankaj was saying, start experimenting even with this demo system, because that's what we're seeing from Dynatrace. People don't know, and that's okay, it's time to experiment. So the user has their query back. How do we get observability of this system? There's a lot of complexity there, but actually it's quite simple. It's 4 or 5 lines of code. We initialize the trace loop, we give it an application name, give it a Dynatrace API endpoint, and in the headers block there, we provide an API token that allows the observability data to get into Dynatrace as an authenticated signal. Fantastic. We've got all of the raw data. Let's finally see what we can do with it. This is your high-level executive, but also development dashboard. And again, I encourage you to start thinking about observability in development. So some of the content of this dashboard you'll recognize from any other application. Cost, red metrics like response and error durations. Others, like the green bar there and the blue band, is more specific to LLMs. This is actually Dynatrace predicting the future. That blue bar is a future prediction, and you can use that to trigger other Dynatrace features like workflows and site reliability guardians. And then we've got all sorts of metrics and charts about tracking cost and prompt usage on there. So let's have a look at that. The top row is our token usage. What you send to the model, what you get back from the model. Tracking that is critical to your POC or your production success. In the middle there, you see the breakdown of token consumption by model, because you're not going to be evaluating a single model. You're going to be looking at multiple models. So getting that lens on the data. And again, we've got the prediction there. And that, by the way, that works with any time series metric, whether it's prompt tokens or CPU or something else. You can start to predict the future and get ahead of problems in production. The next section on the dashboard, I'm just drilling into these, is the guardrails. So how grounded in reality is your model? How many prompts is guardrails blocking? Give me that data in context of not only my application, but my entire enterprise. Because your LLM or your Gen AI app is just one part of a bigger picture. So we've got the very high level, but let's really dig into the deep technical level, because at the end of the day, if we can't explain the why, then we're stuck kind of in the middle ground of seeing metrics on a dashboard. So what you're seeing here is the top chart is every call to the model, end to end. Now the blue bars, this is a distributed trace. The way to read this is the longer the blue bar, the more time was spent. And remember I was talking about each of those hops around our application to the cache layer, to the model, through Bedrock. That is each individual blue bar. And we can actually attach logs and events to those individual, they're called spans. And so here you're actually seeing what the user sent in and what the user got back out. So we've, in a couple of clicks, drilled from a very high level dashboard to something that a developer can really fundamentally say, this is how they attempted to misuse the model, or this is what good usage looks like. We should optimize for this use case. The last use case I want to cover is going to become more and more important as time goes on and as we experiment and learn more about these models, and that's data compliance. So what you're seeing here, if you can see the fetch biz events, Dynatrace has an event, has a concept of eventing. And here we're sending in a typed event, a business event. That is important because in Dynatrace, events are never aggregated. They're never sampled, they're never dropped. So when you send an event in, or when you convert something like a different signal, like a log, to an event, you can hold that event forever. Now by default it's 30 days, but you can choose to expand that to 10 years. And so for auditing purposes, what you're seeing in the bottom there is every single call, the prompt, the response, which model was used, how long it took, how many tokens, and as I say, that is never ever aggregated. So for your compliance teams and for auditing, this will become more and more important as time goes on. Now, everything I've just shown is completely open source. There is a Git repo behind all of this. So if you want to take this away and experiment and see how it was all done, all of the dashboards, have a scan of the QR code. It's going to take you to the blog post on AWS, which will then direct you to the GitHub link. So you can recreate everything that you've just witnessed today, and really, as we're all builders today, you can dig in and see what's going on. And with that, I'd just like to encourage you, if some of the advanced topics like site reliability guardians and workflows were of interest, I'll be at the Dynatrace booth all day, so drop by and we can have a chat and really dig into the details. But, yeah, Pankaj, any final thoughts?
Thanks, Adam. So folks, as you saw, AWS doesn't just let you, Amazon Bedrock doesn't just let you build generative AI applications. It lets you build Gen AI apps that you can trust. And the way we see it is the future of Gen AI applications is observable, right? And observability is going to play a core role in your future Gen AI apps. And that's what I would like to say, right? The future starts here. Let's go build. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Cheers.
Awesome, thank you so much. Can we have a huge round of applause for Pankaj and Adam? It's not easy to be the first session. So before we finish up, if everyone could just leave their headsets on the chair, these are tuned to only work